Hello everybody, it's the War Hipster here, coming at you with another Contrast Plus painting tutorial, and today we are painting the fantastic, the magnificent, the brand new Lord Solar Leontis. Here he is. What an absolute cracker of a miniature he is. He looks fantastic, ready to lead the regiments of the Astra Militarum across the galaxy. Sent to me early by Games Workshop to paint up and review for all of you. And well, with no further ado, we're going to jump in and we're going to start painting him. He has been primed in Grey Seer. Now, most of our Astra Militarum stuff has been done in Wraithbone, but this guy, absolutely worth doing in Grey Seer because he's got that little bit of colder element to him. There's some warm elements on there, but we are more than able to achieve them off of the Grey Seer base. And of course, that scenic base there is kind of very cold, so that's why we've gone with Grey Seer. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start by working on the horse. We're going to get a horse up to code before we work on the Lord himself. And the colour we're going to be using first is Agrax Earthshade. And we're going to be applying this over the top of what is going to be all of the cream areas. Now, this is going to come out quite brown, but it's going to give us the right shading for those cream areas. And that's exactly what we want. So this definite kind of brown, dark brown I should say, shading around these areas. Whereas the sections themselves are actually quite bright, they're not this dark. So what this is going to include areas such as this neck bit here, like that. It's going to include the areas around the hooves, so just here, like so. All the way around. Like that. I'm going to do that across all of them. It's also going to include the undercarriage of the horse, but none of the kind of armor panels or anything like that. We don't need to do those. For now. So with that Agrax Earthshade applied to all of our what will be cream parts, as you can see, we've got that really lovely shading going on. It's actually not as cold as I thought it was going to be, but what we're going to do now is move on to our next colour, and that's going to be some Nuln Oil. And we're going to be applying this over the top of all of what is going to be our bright Arctic white kind of structure of the horse. So you got the, well, basically when you look at the box art, all of the white bits on the horse. One thing I should just point out, actually, thinking about it, the entire of that central panel on the horse's undercarriage under there is Agrax Earthshade. I noticed it literally just after I hit stop on the record. And so with Nuln Oil applied to all of those areas, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some Black Legion and we're going to apply this over the top of the horse's hooves, the reins on the horse, and the two kind of ribbed cables around the neck. And so with that now done, what we're going to do is we're going to take some thinned down Retributor armor, and we're going to apply this over, well, pretty much all of our remaining details here. There is some silver on here, which we haven't got to yet, and those are the things like the little joints and things between the legs. But all of our armor, for example, here is now gold. So we're just going to be taking this Retributor armor and getting a nice coat of this all over. It might take a couple of thin coats to get really strong gold on there. We've got some quite large panels here, but otherwise we just want to get it all over the remaining parts of the horse. Pretty much. And so with all of that Retributor armor applied, we're then going to take some thinned down Iron Warriors and we're going to apply this to our silver details. So these are the joints on the horse and the horse's eyes. So with that done, all of our base coats are now on. We do have a little bit of red to add for the horse's eyes and this little cable in here, but we're just not going to do that for the moment, because what we are in fact going to do is we're going to add some shades. And the first one we're going to add is Reikland Flesh Shade, and we're going to apply this over the top of all the gold. And with all of that Reikland Flesh Shade applied, we're then going to take some Nuln Oil. I'm going to use this to shade the silver. So with all of those shades applied, our horse is now what I would call a War Hipster battle ready, and it's already looking pretty cool. However, we're not going to leave it there. No, we're going to take it to the next level. And we're doing this now before we do Lord Solar Leontus, just that way, because it's going to look cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some thinned down Wraithbone, and we're going to use this to effectively relayer all of our areas that we did with Agrax Earthshade. Now this might take a couple of thin coats, but what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be applying this over the flat surfaces . Just avoiding where the Agrax Earthshade has settled in the recesses. So with that Wraithbone relayered over all of those details, what we're now going to do is we're going to relayer all of the white, and the colour we're going to be using for this is Corax White, and we're doing much the same thing as we just did with the Wraithbone. We're going to be applying this over the top of all of our flat details, just avoiding anywhere where the Nuln Oil has settled. So with that now done, what we're going to do is we're going to do our next relayer, which is going to be some Retributor armor once again. Only what we're going to be doing is we're going to be applying this over the flat armor panels, but not over the top of any of the kind of the detail. We don't need it on there. So we're just going to, around here, start reapplying the Retributor armor. Just like that sort of thing. So with that Retributor armor applied to all of our gold, as you can see, we've got beautifully shiny gold now. What we're going to do is we're going to take some thinned down Liberator gold, and we're going to use this to relayer our details. We want this to be just that little bit brighter. So over the top of the large Aquila here on the front. Just like this. So with that done, all of our layers are now applied. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit more colour and warmth into him. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a roughly 1-to-1 mix of contrast medium and Fuegan orange, and we're going to apply this over the top of all the gold. With that Fuegan orange and contrast medium mix applied to all of the gold, we're then going to take a roughly 4 parts contrast medium to 1 part Black Templar mix, and we're going to apply this over the tail, but we're going to blend it out. So we've relayered it with the Corax white. We're just going to add this Black Templar like that up to around about the corner. Like that. We're going to wash the brush, and then with a clean brush we're just going to blend it out just a little bit, just by feathering away at the transition like that. And so with that done, we're now going to add some highlights, and the first colour is going to be a roughly 2 parts Stormhost Silver to 1 part Retributor Armor mix. And we're going to be using this to highlight all of the gold. So with that done, the gold is all finished and it looks fabulous. So what we're going to do is going to move on to highlighting the black details, and the colour we're going to be using for this is Dawnstone. Just picking out the edges as per usual. So with that Dawnstone applied, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some thinned down white scar, and we're going to apply this to the sharpest points on all the white details. So it's not a full highlight, but we're just looking for areas such as little rivets and little points of interest here and there. So any sharp corners, anywhere where you think the light would be reflecting. So with that white scar applied to all of the white, what we're now going to do is going to take some Administratum Grey, and we're going to use this to highlight the darker parts of the tail. Just like that sort of thing. And so with that Administratum Grey applied, we now need to take some Iron Hand Steel, and we'll use this to highlight all the silver. And so with that now done, all that remains on the horse to do is to take some Blood Angels Red and apply this over the lenses. So we've got the one here, and the one here. And we're also going to apply this Blood Angels Red over this tiny little cable. Like that. So with that all done, it is now time to work our way up Lord Solar Leontus himself. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start by taking some Frostheart, and we're going to apply this over the top of his trousers and his undershirt. So with that Frostheart all applied, we're then going to take some Sigvald Burgundy, and we're going to apply this to his skirt. And so with that done, we're then going to take some Agrax Earthshade, and we're going to apply this over the tips of the scarf, tassels. Yeah, let's go with tassels. You can do that like that. And we're also going to apply Agrax Earthshade over his gloves. So with that Agrax shade applied, we're then going to take some Black Legion and we're going to apply this over the top of the sword scabbard, the belt, and any leather straps. So with the Black Legion all applied, we did the strap on his helmet, we did this little kind of aquila on both sides of the cloak, and we did the sword wrap as well as the boots. Forgot to point that out. So what we're going to do is move on to our next colour, and that is going to be Bile Red. I'm going to get this all over the top of his cloak, the outside of the cloak, not the inside. So with that done, we're then going to take some Drakenhof Nightshade and we're going to apply this over the inside of the cloak. Now don't worry, it's going to be very blue. We will fix that a little bit later. We're mainly doing this because we want that really nice shading. And we want to be able to put this over the top of the black on the cloak. And you may have noticed there's a little groove at the bottom of the cloak, which we need to get a colour in. Just like this. So with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some thinned down Retributor armour. We're going to apply this over the top of all of the gold. Now there is rather a lot of it, as you would expect for the Lord Solar himself. So we've got all of his armour, got the decorative features on his sword, on his scabbard, on his pistol holster. So with that now done, what we're going to do is we're going to take some Guilliman flesh. We're going to apply this over the top of his face. So with that Guilliman flesh applied, we have just one last base coat to apply, and that is going to be some thinned down Leadbelcher, and it's going to be on all of our remaining details. So with that Leadbelcher all applied, it is now time to add some shades to the model, as we've got all of our base coats on here now. So that's what we're going to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some Reikland Flesh shade first of all, and we're going to apply this over the top of all of the gold, including his face as well. So we're just going to start applying this Reikland Flesh shade, just like this. And then once that's done, we shall return. So with all of that Reichland Flesh shade applied to all the gold, what we're now going to do is going to take a roughly 1-to-1 mix of Contrast Medium and Blood Angels Red. I'm going to use this to shade the cloak. And with that Blood Angels Red applied to the cloak, we then take some Nuln Oil and we're going to apply this over the top of the silver and the black and the burgundy. So with those shades applied, the Lord Solar, Leontis himself, is now at what I would call a War Hipster battle ready. He's still drying in a few places, but that's okay, because what we're going to do is move on to taking him to the next level, and we're actually going to start with his cloak. Now the colour we're going to be using first for this is Ulthuan Grey, and what we're going to be doing here is we're essentially going to be relayering Ulthuan Grey over the top of the flat parts of the cloak. Just like this. Now Ulthuan Grey, being what it is, slightly older layer of paint, might require a couple of thin coats to get a good strong colour. It's definitely going to require that for me. So just take your time here, get this all over, and just avoid those recesses. And so with that Ulthuan Grey applied, we're then going to take some thinned down Corax White, and we're going to do the same thing again, only just a little bit narrower. Leaving some of that Ulthuan Grey closest to the recesses. And so with that Corax White applied, I've also added to the scarf as well. What we're going to do is we're going to take a roughly 1-to-1 mix of Contrast Medium and Pilar Glacier, because we want to make this nice and soft as opposed to looking very similar to the armour down there. So we're just going to take this Pilar Glacier mix and we're just going to add this over the top. Just like that, just to give it a hint of blue. So with that Pilar Glacier Contrast Medium mix applied, our white is now finished. So what we're going to do is move on to his clothes. And the colour we're going to be using is Blue Horror. And we're going to be using this as a relayer over the top. Just like this. So with that done, his blue clothes are now finished. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some thinned down Wraithbone and we're going to use this to relayer the gloves. A lot of relayering going on. But he is very bright. So with that done, the gloves are now finished. So what we're going to do is move on to the red of the cloak. And the colour we're going to be using for this is Evil Sunz Scarlet. And you'll never guess what we're doing. We're relayering here. So with that Evil Sunz Scarlet applied, what we then do is we take some thinned down Wild Rider Red and we'll apply this over the kind of sharper parts of the folds. So for example, around the top here. Like that. So with that Wild Rider Red applied, we then take a teeny tiny amount of Fire Dragon Bright. I'm going to add this to the sharpest points on the cloak. So we're looking for corners. And the tops of the edges. So with that Fire Dragon Bright applied, our cloak is now finished. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some thinned down Pink Horror and we're going to use this to highlight the burgundy skirt. And with that Pink Horror applied, we then take a teeny tiny amount of Cadian Flesh Tone and we apply this to the sharpest corners. In our burgundy, just like that. So with that now done, we're going to take some thinned down Dawnstone and we're going to use this to highlight the black. So with that now done, it's time to work on the metallics. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some thinned down Retributor armor, and just as we did on the horse, we're going to layer this over the top of the flat smooth panels, just avoiding the recesses. Now we don't have very many of these here. We've just got the shoulders and the chest plate and the back of his helmet. And so with that Retributor armor applied to the flats of the panels, like we did on the horse, what we're going to do is we're going to take some Liberator Gold and we're going to use this to re-layer the Aquila on his chest. And so with that done, we don't need to do the Fuegan orange bit here. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go straight into highlighting, and we're going to be using our 2-part Stormhost Silver to 1-part Retributor armor mix. And we're going to be doing this over all of our gold details, including the ones we've already done, of course, on the horse. Now that his gold is all bright and shiny and looking fantastic, what we're going to do now is we're going to take some thinned down Leadbelcher, and we're going to use this to do a bit of relayering on the sword. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be doing kind of a bit of a sort of non-metallic metal effect. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be kind of relayering the Leadbelcher over the kind of top half of the left-hand side of the blade, like that sort of thing, and over the bottom half of the right hand side of the blade. Just like that. And then also over the top of this kind of piece of the sword as well, like that. I'm going to do this, of course, on both sides. So with that Leadbelcher applied, we're then going to do pretty much the same thing again with some iron hand steel. Only this time we've got it thinned down a little bit more than normal. And what we're going to do here is we're going to do slightly less of the sword, so about the top third, like that, in a sort of diagonal motion. We're then going to wash the brush, and then whilst it's still wet on there, we're just going to feather away at that transition, just to kind of blend it in. Which is why I've got it thinned down a little bit more than normal. And then we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side, from the bottom like that. Wash the brush, and then smooth. Feather away. Like that. So with that done, it's subtle but effective. What we're going to do now is we're going to take some Iron Breaker. I'm going to use this to highlight all of the edges on all of the silver. And so finally, just to finish off the sword blade, what we're going to do is we're going to take some Stormhost Silver, and we're just going to apply this to the sharpest point at the top of the sword. Just like that. So with the silver all done, it's now time to work on his face, and what we're going to do is we're going to take some flayed one flesh, and we're just going to use this to pick out the sharpest points on his face. So areas such as his cheekbones, and his nose, just like this. And so with that flayed one flesh applied, we then take a tiny amount of Black Legion, and we're going to apply this over the top of his eyeballs. And finally, just to finish off the Lord Zolar, we're going to take a teeny tiny dot of Screaming Skull. I'm going to add this in each corner of his eyes. And so with his face now complete, Lord Zolar Leontis is now finished, and he looks absolutely fantastic. However, we do still have that base to do, the Fallen Titan head, and that's exactly what we're going to do now. So the colour we're going to be using first is Castellax Bronze, and we're going to be applying this over the top of all of the armour of the Titan head, including the trim. Don't worry, we have a plan. So with that Castellax Bronze all applied, we're then going to take some thinned down Iron Warriors, and we're going to apply this to the rest of the metallic details. So with that Iron Warriors all applied, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some Black Templar, and we're going to apply this on the inside of all the trim on Titan. So with that Black Templar all applied, we're just going to wait for it to dry just for a moment. But what we are going to do whilst we're waiting for that to do its thing is we're going to take some Targor Raid Shade here, and we're going to apply this over the top of our rocks. This is slightly different to the box art, but it's just my favourite kind of, one of my favourite recipes of doing this kind of thing. I think it looks fantastic. I'm just going to get this over the top of the Castellax Bronze that we've painted there as well, just for the sake of time. So with that Targor Raid Shade all applied, what we're now going to do is we're going to take some Agrax Earthshade, and we're going to apply this over the top of all of the Castellax Bronze, the Black Templar, and the Iron Warriors. Iron Warriors? The Iron Warriors. And we're just going to absolutely layer it on. So with all of that Agrax Earthshade applied all over, again it's still drying in some places, but that's okay, because what we're going to do is we're going to take some Wildwood and we're going to apply this over the top of all of the soil. Around the base. Like that. And then, additionally, on the Titan itself, we're just going to stipple little bits of Wildwood here and there. Just like this. And for our final base coat, we're then going to take some Skeleton Horde. I'm going to apply this over the skull. And then we're going to leave it to dry. So now that that base is all dry, what we're going to do is we're going to dry brush all of our metallics now. This is the entire of the Titan head, and we're going to dry brush it with some Ironbreaker. I just want to be careful around the really dark metallics, because we don't want to kind of get it all silvery. We really like that kind of, that darkness there, but otherwise we just want to get it on there. And any scratching or anything like that, it's just going to add to the ruined nature of this fallen Titan. And we're going to do this over the top of the black as well, just catching the edges, just like this. So with all of that dry brushed silver applied, as you can see, it's starting to look really, really cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some Blood Angels Red, and we're going to apply this over the cracked lenses on the Titan. Got one just there, and we've got one here, and we've got one here as well, like that. And so just before we can apply our final dry brush to finish it off, we need to add that texture paint on there and then all the negative space. And the texture paint I'm going to be using for this is Stirland Battlemire. Now it is a bit of a different colour to Wildwood, but that's okay, because once we do our final dry brush, it blends it all together. So I'm just going to be getting this all over. But of course you could do it any colour that you want to suit the rest of your army. Now that that Stirland Battlemire is all dry, what we're going to do is going to add our final dry brush, which is going to be some Tyrant Skull. And we're going to do this over the top of all of the soil. We're going to do this over the top of the fallen rocks at the back. And if you want to, you can add a little bit of this over the top of the Titan as well, to give it a little bit of kind of dirt. Make it look like it's been there a little while. Just like this sort of thing. And so, with his base complete, Lord Solar Leontus is now finished, and I think he is absolutely spectacular. I think it's an absolutely wonderful miniature. It's a lot of fun to paint. I really like going up to this kind of super bright level using kind of more of a classic method at times, which is just a lot of fun. It's kind of nostalgic in a way, especially on something that's as new as this. Oh my goodness me, it's such a centerpiece. I didn't think that was possible in Astra Militarum, but here we are. My goodness me, what an absolute cracker. If you enjoyed this video, you love the channel, and you want to support me further like these legends and bosses on the screen before you, you can do so. Head to patreon.com/warhipster or head to ko-fi.com/warhipster. Alternatively, you could become a YouTube member by heading to the channel page and clicking on the join button just here, just like these amazing, wonderful people have done. And if you really like this video or you just want to shoot me some support, you can click on the thanks button just below this video. Don't forget to share it, like it, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And to make sure you stay up to date, don't forget to click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Happy wargaming.